that experience when you're young where you watch a film and you think it's one film and then you watch it when you're older and you realise you had no idea what you were watching?
Yeah, all the time.
What I mean is I remember watching this movie when I was a kid, really young. I think I was in America for some reason, and I was with my brother, and we were staying with my auntie, and I think we'd kind of like woken up and we put the telly on. We weren't supposed to be watching it, but we just couldn't sleep, and we were like, fuck it. And this horror movie was on, and it was around about the scene where Jason attacks the couple in the caravan, and he puts that girl's face through the metal. And I remember being freaked out and thinking it was just a straight, legit horror movie. And then you watch it when you're an adult and you realise, oh, this is a comedy.
Yeah.
Not just a comedy, but one of the first self-aware meta horror comedies.
We better turn around.
Why?
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
When I first started watching it, I did have for a second of, like, is this meant to be, like, really ironic, or is it what they're trying to do? And then, like, 10 seconds later, I just kind of clocked that this was meant to be, like, a comedy.
Well, in the opening credit sequence, Jason does the James Bond quick turn, and instead of firing a gun, he uses his weapon. So, in fact, the tone it sets right with that from the get-go. If anything, I always think, like, that was too silly for the film that follows.
They shouldn't have done that.
Like, it's not... It's self-aware, but it's not fucking Naked Gun.
Yeah.
It's not Airplane. Like, I always thought that was actually really out of place and weird that they put that in the opening credits. He's one of the most iconic characters ever.
Yeah.
Not just in the horror genre. Immediately recognisable with the mask. And it's kind of funny when you consider of all the big horror franchises that tend to always have one killer at the heart of it. Friday the 13th is probably the weirdest because you have his mum is the killer in the first one. Then he becomes the killer.
Yeah.
Most iconic look about him is the hockey mask. But he doesn't get that till I think at least the third film, maybe the fourth film. But this was the first film in the franchise where it wasn't serious anymore. It went for a comedic angle, not as comedic as we'd be used to now. Like meta horror comedies are extremely on the nose now. Like they're so breaking down the fourth wall and breaking down clearly all the fundamentals of the genre and don't go outside, and if you hear a strange noise, never have sex in a horror movie because you're definitely gonna die. But at the time, this was really new. Like, it was a new thing to be on the nose and self-aware in a film. And it was actually really influential on the writer of Scream, which is kind of the poster child of self-aware meta horror movies. And the director, Tom McLoughlin of Jason Lives, actually was offered to work on Scream as a director years later, which surprised me because if you look at his career, he didn't really do much before this. He was mainly a writer, and he got Jason Lives, and then after that, Jason Lives wasn't a massive success. It made the least amount of money of any Friday the 13th movie up to date. It was the first Friday the 13th movie to not open up as number one at the box office. And his career after this, he mainly kind of did a lot of directing for TV. Did some stuff I liked. He worked on the Freddy Krueger TV series and the short-lived Friday the 13th TV series. But then it was a lot of like made-for-TV movies. And his career wasn't doing particularly well. So I was really surprised. I think the only reason he must have been offered or considered for the role of directing Scream must have been the fact that the screenwriter was such a big fan of his. But then again, screenwriters don't really have any power or get any credit in the film industry. So I'd be surprised if that was the reason.
And what I did like about it as well, Declan, is you don't necessarily have to have seen... I mean, I guess the thing about the lake at the end and they have to return him there, you would have to know a little bit about the whole story on that. But other than that, you don't have to have seen all the other films for it to be a decent standalone film, which I like.
You don't even have to pay attention in this film.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's not one of those. It's one of those films where the beats are fairly familiar and obvious.
Yes.
It's kind of like when you put on a teen comedy movie or something.
Yeah.
You know the beats it's going to hit, and you put it on for that comforting reason that you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
You don't want to be surprised. Maybe in little pieces here and there, but not really. You want it to hit all the home runs, do all the things you know it's going to do, and, you know, you leave happy. But in this film, like you said, it opens up, and Tommy Jarvis, he'd been the lead protagonist for 3 in a row now, but this was the 3rd time he was portrayed by a different actor. Did you recognise him? We've reviewed one of his movies before.
Hang on. See, this was really... I actually haven't I haven't Googled this because I was trying to work it out this whole time. I do recognise him, but I kept getting fucking... Because he looks so much like fucking Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell, like that classic time period. No, I couldn't put my finger on it.
Give me a clue.
Go on.
A bag of rabid weasels.
Oh, Evil Dead.
No, Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead.
I know you
Sorry,
knew what I meant.
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Which, I got to be honest, I did not recognise him at first at all until I looked up his IMDb. But for me, I loved him in Return of the Living Dead. In this movie, he was one of, I wouldn't say the sore points, because it's just not the kind of movie where you'd worry about that necessarily, but I found him very uncharismatic and not as likeable, and I don't know if it was the performance or the fact that he is a complete idiot. Like, he's your hero in this movie, but he is also the fuckhead who starts it all off in the first place by digging up Jason.
Yeah. At some points, it was getting a bit jarring to me, like, especially when he was, like locked up in the prison with, like, that police officer. He's like, it was getting a bit jarring when he's like, no, I'm telling the truth, please.
No way, you gotta listen to me. Jason's coming here, he's after me. I tried to destroy him, but I fucked up.
You got that right, punk.
So we start off, so he digs up Jason, and I like the fact that they just went with the classic Frankenstein route of lightning just revives the dead, which is definitely not, not how it works, but in this, just magically, it doesn't need to give you any explanation beyond he just comes back to life.
Yeah.
Because he has already come back to life. Like, it's not abnormal for the franchise that he's returning from the dead.
No.
He's done it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And he's on a mission, he's like, I need to dig up his body and cremate him just to know he's dead. But lightning strikes, brings him back to life, and the killing spree starts. Now, how many people do you reckon he kills in this movie?
I'd say around 20.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe even more.
Close, it was 18.
Oh.
But I always felt like he kills way more people.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Because it's got the feel of that. Pretty much, you set up, Jason's revived within about 5 minutes. And the kills start within 6 minutes. Like, he is just on a spree. And there's a good portion of the movie until the final sort of half an hour final act where you're never one scene away from Jason killing someone.
Yeah.
It pretty much becomes, what's Tommy doing? Oh, he's got arrested. Jason kills someone. Tommy's met the blonde chick and clearly going to be the love interest. Jason kills someone. And it's just like that for the next hour. I loved a lot of the minor characters in this.
My favourite minor character, actually, the gravedigger.
Yeah.
Because he turns up and it was like, he starts swilling whiskey and getting drunk, and he was like, well, they're not going to take my job, and then he like covers it up, doesn't he?
Why'd they have to go and dig up Jason? Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
Immediately as I was watching it, I'd completely forgotten about the gravedigger, and I was cracking up
He's
straight away.
funny, man.
I made a note of him just being like, I love the gravedigger.
Yeah,
That was it. I found him hilarious. But there's something about his scenes I found a bit odd. They just felt weird in it, and I saw afterwards. I looked up, and those were scenes that were put in afterwards. Usually, a studio, when they're making a movie, they're worried about getting an R rating. Like, you don't want as high a rating as possible.
Yeah.
But they were actually worried once they'd finished shooting that they were going to get a PG-13 rating, because it really wasn't that violent when it came down to it.
Yeah, I guess
Tom
so.
McLoughlin, the director, was, he didn't really want any nudity in it. He did approach one of the actresses during the caravan scene to be topless for her sex scene.
Yeah.
And she refused because, they'd already signed the contracts and she didn't need to and she didn't want to. But he didn't really want to even approach it in the first place. He had no particular interest in it. And this was actually the first Friday the 13th movie not to have any nudity.
You gotta keep it up to the end of the song.
How much longer?
It's only 10 more minutes.
It were also a lot of the most violent shots, not scenes, but violent shots during the killings were removed out of choice by Tom McLoughlin. So when it came down to the final cut and the producers all saw it, they were kind of like, this ain't even that gruesome, like we need some more kills. So the gravedigger, his death scene was put in afterwards and filmed afterwards. And also I think the couple out in the woods who were having a picnic about to have sex, just to up the violence so they could get that R rating.
The one that made me laugh the most, if we're talking about on-screen deaths, for some reason, like, when he's first revived, it's following those fucking executives in a forest doing some, like, team building.
Also, was two of them identical twins?
I think so.
But they work for the same company.
Yeah. And then obviously the woman comes out and, like, shoots him, and then they're like, bitch. And then fucking Jason, like, gets one of them and like slams their head into the tree.
That was the best guy who it just cuts to him alone in the woods wearing that little bandana that says I've been shot.
Yeah.
And he's just beating this tree going, that bitch, you fucking dumb bitch.
Dumb broad, she tricked me. God, they're gonna last for months. She should have stayed in the kitchen where she belongs.
The acting was so bad. And then he slams his head into the tree and then it makes a smiley face.
No, I think that smiling face must have already been there.
Right.
And he just got slammed into it.
Oh, okay. So he's...
I assume that must have.
So Jason's picked that exact tree with a smiley face.
Or it's a coincidence or whatever.
But that was quite... That did kind of amuse me and it sets up the tone of the film.
The next time he runs into some of the paintballing executives away on their little weekend morale building
whatever they're doing. Yeah.
So he runs into the two identical twins and the woman who's like being really smug about the fact that she's hit him. And he does a triple beheading. To the horror of that little nerdy sort of Woody Allen guy behind him. But that's another one where Tom McLoughlin, the director, filmed the heads actually getting cut off. And they filmed them hitting the floor. And they didn't use it. And I don't know, I think he might have actually taken that one out because it didn't look that effective maybe, or looked a bit silly. But you do kind of feel like I was waiting for the gruesome bits. Like, it is a gruesome movie, it is a very violent movie, but it nearly shied away from the violence at points. It was kind of, a lot of it was suggested or off screen.
I did find it amusing when it's the couple driving in the car. Yeah. And then he's like in the road. And then obviously the girl that he's with makes the point of like, have you not seen horror movies? Like, he's going to kill you. Do you know what I mean?
Stay cool.
Stay cool, you ain't Dirty Harry. Now stop it.
All right, scumbag. Get out of the road.
The actress playing Elizabeth, I think her name was, one of the camp counsellors who ended up not making it back to the camp. Yes. She was actually the director's wife. And she was actually nearly in a scene where he's smashing the railing against the car window, trying to get at her. Something went wrong, I'm not sure exactly, but basically she came really close to being impaled for real with it.
Fucking hell.
Which is so crazy when you think of movies back in the day, like, I mean, sadly, clearly it still happens sometimes, like with the Alec Baldwin thing. But nowadays, film sets, Western film sets are so safe.
What's his name? Crow? The Crow guy?
The Crow, back in the day. But that was more of a bizarre accident. But even then, that probably wouldn't happen as much today. But back in the day, man, they were fucking reckless on film sets. Like, they were crazy.
Don't shoot, please! You in show business, kid? You sure know how to make an entrance.
What do you think of the sheriff?
I liked him. Like,
I did as well.
It sets it up perfectly where Tommy like runs in. He's like, he's got his gun and he's like, "I'm gonna blow your brains out, boy," or whatever.
Yeah, because I found myself like, I know the sheriff was supposed to be the douchebag that you don't like, but I was a bit like, well, first of all, Tommy, you're not exactly helping your point where you're saying someone's come back from the. Why don't you just say a serial killer?
Yeah.
Pretending to be Jason is on the loose, and then don't start like grabbing their guns and shit and saying, "Come on." It's like, what are you doing?
Imagine if that happened in like, imagine if someone's in a police station in real life America, they'd be dead within seconds.
Blonde, blue eyes. But he, like, it's like you don't help your point, but then it's also the classic thing of the policeman who, no matter what you say, like, oh, you think this is a joke,
Yeah,
do you?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Like the sign says, you are now leaving Forest Green. Don't forget to buckle up. You are damn lucky, kid.
he takes Tommy to the edge of town and drops him off, which again, like, is a bit like,
Yeah.
he's just gonna walk straight
Yeah,
back in.
and then he turns to like the other direction, and then he tells the fat bumbling psychic guy who was really annoying, but I guess he played his part well because he was meant to be. I told you, put on the lights, and then they start like chasing him. It's like it's clear he's gonna do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, why did you even let him drive?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Just drop him off. Like,
Sheriff, wait! You gotta listen.
I'm tired of listening to you, kid.
I gotta show you Jason's grave.
The kills are good. Like, I like the fact, like, the girl getting her head caved into the side of the caravan, and you can see the outline of her face. That was always the most memorable one to me. I also liked the guy that gets his head completely crushed in.
yeah,
That was a good kill. The triple beheading.
was cool, but it wasn't that cool in execution.
That should go down in movie folklore as a kill. But they pussied out. Like, I just feel like they did. I get it, to be fair, if they actually didn't use it because the effect didn't work, you can't argue with that, that's fair enough. But fucking go back and film it again and make it work. Like, figure something out, man.
It's hard to really like obviously back in the day when this was given an R rating, probably at the time, a lot of people like would have been making complaints about it, like probably like picket signs outside and shit like
Yeah, but
this.
that's what they want.
Yeah,
You don't worry about
no, which is what they want, because back in that time you had that famous woman from America who was trying to like censor everything, like whatever her name was, like any rap music that would come out, like this is gangster rap, and she. Obviously now we've been very desensitized to like violence.
I do have that thing sometimes where I hear people say like, "Oh, it's really like be careful, it's really gruesome," and then I watch it and I'm like, "This is tame," and you think, "Am I a psychopath? Like, should I be disturbed by this?"
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
Horror movies are still a potential big box office hit on a low budget potential because you can create a lot of atmosphere and suspense without necessarily using a big budget. And horror movies can just hit big. Like, when a horror movie does well, it brings in really big numbers. But they don't do it the way they used to. And partly that's just because of what the cinema industry is like nowadays. It's not like it used to be with streaming and all the other options. But also, I feel like we'll never understand the level of controversy horror movies like the original Friday the 13th, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
or The Exorcist, or
the amount of controversy they must have generated at the time, and it's the same reason like drug use will probably go down when it becomes legal.
But it's got to be a difficult one, because if you think about it, Declan, the amount of viewers you lose for it being an 18 certificate. They're looking at it as they're going to lose profit, so they're like probably like tone down the violence. This is too gory.
Yeah, they probably do have a general formula for. I think there's an understanding that with a horror movie, you're getting a certain audience anyway, and you probably are writing off a certain age group anyway. But you are probably right. I'm sure it definitely. Well, put it this way: the new Marvel's bringing out rebooting Blade. It's gonna be a 12A.
Yeah,
so it's gonna fucking suck.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, no, but that is a good example of what you're saying.
I'll let you know if I hear anything about your camp leaders.
Don't beat him up too bad, Dad. He's kind of cute.
Megan, leave.
I'm a sucker for like love interests and subplots, love storylines, and all that. And I actually really liked the chick who was playing Megan.
Yeah.
But their first kiss through the bars.
Yeah, that
How
was stupid.
fucking stupid was that?
It was stupid, and secondly, like...
But even just the way it was done was so retarded.
Give it back, punk!
That was retarded.
Because he was trying to kiss her, and then she was like trying to get away from him, and then she started kissing him, and then he looked shocked. Just the way it was filmed was so terrible.
And I hate the way, like... I guess it was meant to be ironic yet again, but I hate the way they like set the groundwork for it. It's like oh, he's kind of cute, and then all the other girls start giggling like.
No, I actually really like that. They perfectly set up, like, because they'd already established this sheriff fucking hates him, and then you realise, oh, that chick who fancies him is his daughter, so there's extra reason for him to hate him, and we know he's gonna fuck his daughter eventually. We don't like the sheriff at this point because he's been a dick to Tommy, even though Tommy's a fucking idiot who started it all in the first place, and it establishes her character because she is more, for me, she is the main character I get behind. She's the one, even though Tommy's the one who's, you know, been in previous movies and he goes to the bookshop to get like all those books on the occult so he can figure out a way to beat Jason. She drives a fast car. She's the one who's like talking shit to him, be like, get in, bitch, like, let's go beat Jason.
Yeah.
Then let's get going. We can argue about it on the way. You tell me what you need and I'll see to it that you get it. Besides, nobody drives this puppy but me.
But what makes me laugh as well, like, the serial killers always go to like these shitty towns with like, even after several serial killer sprees where he's murdered hundreds and hundreds of people, the town population still remains. So like, if I knew that there'd been like all these murders, I'd be like, fuck living there.
No one in Forest Green wants to be reminded of what that maniac did here. That's why we changed the name. People want to forget this was Crystal Lake, and they don't need some kid stirring up Jason shit again.
Funny in these movies where no one ever believes it. It's like in Jaws too. The mayor is just back to being like, there's no shark. You gotta open for the 4th of July. It's the same thing in these movies. They're always like, what do you mean he's going to come back to life?
Seems your boyfriend wants people to believe Jason has returned.
I thought Jason was just a legend.
That's right. Only Tommy wants to prove the legend is true.
I like the poetic set idea of bring Jason back to the lake where he first drowned in the first place.
Yeah.
It's the same way where you kind of just accept that lightning brings him back to life. It makes sense in a character way of his origin story of drowning in that lake. But then they go the extra step of like mashing his neck up with a propeller.
This does raise questions again. It's like, how comes it's taking them so long to formulate this plan? Like, why didn't they just chop him up and throw him in the lake? Like,
you mean? Well, hold up. So you're saying that he clearly has some sort of plan. He's come back to try and cremate his body. Even though in the previous movie, I'm pretty sure they said he was cremated. But my point is, you're saying why did it take him so long?
No.
He had a plan, and he was trying to do it, and everyone thought he was crazy to do it. And to be fair, Jason was already dead.
That's true, because obviously he goes to get all these occult books, yeah? And then we see the front cover of the book, and we know it's an occult book because it's all in black, and like, you're like, oh, is he going to try and like do spells or some shit to like keep him dead? And that never goes anywhere. He just leaves him in the car. My point is, where does he get from the plan of cremating him to bring him back to life to suddenly then out of nowhere being like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to ditch the cremation plan and chuck him back in the lake because that's where he's died.
Well, I think you said it yourself. It was reading the occult books. Now, obviously, we're doing the fun thing you do with these sort of movies where you know you shouldn't look this deep into them, but you do anyway, which is fun. But I think it's no more complicated than they show him looking at these books or taking these books out as a visual cue to the audience to say, Tommy's reading about the occult.
Yeah.
Rather than just jumping straight into, he has a plan now. There's that one little visual cue of, here's how he formulated his plan. You know what I mean?
I guess it was pretty easy to work out from a visual cue, but it would have served a bit of purpose if he actually did read the book and then there was like a passage in the book to the blonde chick or something.
Do you know what?
In the car where he's like, it says in this book that in order to keep a spirit dead, you must return them to the place of their death.
Do you know what? I actually see what you mean. But I think the main reason is the fact that you don't want to see like the way they built it up. It was that classic, I've got a plan, or he tells someone a plan but it cuts away because the movie doesn't want to tell the audience the plan till the end because it's the reveal.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it made sense for that way. But I suppose you have to have that moment where you think the killer's dead, but he comes back for one last attack. Yeah. I just found it funny that you do sort of the poetic, mystical way of like bringing him back to where he originally died will imprison him, and then you go for the very physical, real world way of cut his face up with a speedboat propeller.
Yeah.
which was actually filmed in Tom McLaughlin's parents' swimming pool.
Oh, really?
And the bits of fake Jason neck ended up completely clogging up their filter, and they had to buy a new one. So I just love the idea of their swimming pool being clogged up with Jason fucking blood and guts.
They just come back and like, how old is Tom McLoughlin in this? Like,
I don't know, because when I read this, I was like, how, like, was this guy like 22?
They like try to clean a swimming pool, and it's all like green and shit because the filter's not working. They're like, Tom, have you been filming your films in here? Yeah. and then you're grounded.
It just sounded weird. Like, it's the kind of thing you expect to read in like when Peter Jackson was making Bad Taste. Not a big like Paramount. Like, as much as these films were low budget, they were huge properties. Like, they would be expected to make a lot of money. The fact that they made what could be low budget was just a big plus. So it's just weird that on a big studio movie like this, he would film a pivotal scene in his parents' swimming pool.
Surely they'd have like an access to a body of water.
That's what I mean. Like, that's why I was like, that's a bit weird. What was your favourite death?
I like the caravan one, to be honest.
Yeah.
The two caravan ones. Like the whole fucking scene was like weird as anything. Like,
I enjoyed
listening
that.
to music and like, hold it for another 10 minutes, and then he cuts the power and he's like, oh.
Well, I didn't.
Which was quite amusing.
I didn't realise they were fucking at first.
I thought she was just dancing on top of it.
Well, it's because in these sort of movies, you're so expecting nudity. You expect nudity when there's not even a reason to be naked. So the fact that they were actually having sex, but not nude, kind of threw me off at first.
Yeah. No, I was like, I thought she was just like fully clothed, just like kind of.
For me, even though they pushed out, nothing can beat the triple beheading. That is just too. Cool.
That was cool. No, again.
And the look on the little nerd fella's face afterwards as he starts running off.
See, I'm not gonna pick that as my favourite because it was cool, but it could have been better. That's what I.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, I didn't know. Actually, I'm gonna change it. My favourite killing was when he hits it into the smiley face tree.
Yeah,
that just made me laugh.
Any of the paintballers getting killed is fucking hysterical.
So I like that.
So do you recommend Jason Lives?
Do you know what? Like, it's one of those films where, again, you're not gonna come away from it like, this has really changed my way of thinking. As you said, like, sometimes you need films where you don't have to, commit to them, and you can just, it's just an easy watch, and you sort of know what's going to happen, but it still is a decent film for what they're trying to do, that kind of like parodying, taking the piss. So I would recommend it for anyone who's, a fan of Jason and the franchise. I think it's a decent effort.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of Friday the 13th or big horror movie fan, like, it's required viewing, and you would have already watched it already because it's one of the classics, or it's one of the films in the classic franchises. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend it for your like average viewer, and I probably wouldn't even recommend it for casual horror fans. I'd probably only recommend it for hardcore horror movie fans who need to see it just for the fact that, like, you can't not see it. If you're a big horror fan, you need to get around to seeing everything, even if it's not going to come that highly recommended. It's not that it's not good. Like, I really enjoyed it. Still enjoyed it this time as much as I did when I was a kid, even if it was in a very different way. But because it's one of the first self-aware, self-referential horror comedies, it's quite tame. If you're a fan of meta horror comedies, then this will just seem kind of lackluster, kind of not pushing the envelope anywhere near as far as you're used to. And as a result, I don't think it will really scratch that itch if you like those sort of movies. And at the same time, it can't be taken as a very serious horror movie either. It's not very scary. Like, Jason kind of just looks like a fat guy in some of the scenes, and sort of just like a standard dude. He just looks like if I tried to make a Jason movie and put on a mask and started walking around. He doesn't have much intimidation factor. No. The comedy is quite smart, there's not gags, it's not a parody movie. I recommend it if you're a hardcore horror movie fan.
This is the Filmy McFilm Film Show.